For folks who are kind of wondering what might have happened to this prior game if you haven't been privy to the news going on around the league, this Sunday was going to be a doubleheader with North Carolina Courage and the Thorns kicking off on CBS Sports, and then Washington Spirit was going to go ahead and host OL Reign. But prior to the match on the Saturday, the day before match day, a release was mentioned. It was an official forfeit issued by the league for Washington Spirit. Via the release, the league announced that they've declared Washington Spirit match against OL Reign officially scheduled to be played on September 12th, 2021 at Audi Field a forfeit due to breaches of the league's medical protocols by the Spirit. So because of that, OL Reign will receive 3 points in the league table per FIFA guidelines, and the game will be recorded as 3-0 in favor of OL Reign. Now, to clarify for folks, just so they are aware, per the FIFA guidelines, the 3-0 goal obviously is going to come into play should, for whatever reason, a tiebreaker come down to these two sides. So that's also the reason for the actual, sort of pretend score line, not just the 3 points, but they also are being given the 3 goals as well. But we got to talk about it a little bit. Lisa, this Washington Spirit side.
Sandra, I can't help but laugh. When this news came out, of course, I was like, oh no, is everyone okay? But then I had to laugh because, of course, something else happened with Washington Spirit.
It's like we're in a simulation, I think I said not too long ago on one of these podcast episodes. And I felt that way because we're talking about Washington Spirit news, about the club and, the franchise, quite frankly. And here we are again, doing this one more time. This is the second consecutive week that this club will not have played a regular season fixture. The prior week, this team was scheduled to play Portland Thorns on the road at Providence Park. That game was ultimately canceled. Now, this is very important point that we have to bring up in case people aren't following along, or in case it's too difficult for you to follow along, because it feels like there's so much news coming out of the Spirit side of things. But the verbiage was very different between these two games. The game against OL Reign, a forfeiture issued down by the league for Washington Spirit. The game against Portland Thorns was canceled. It was canceled due to it was an outbreak of positive COVID cases. It's a string of 4 positive test results amongst the team. So they said this has to be canceled. And at the time that there was going to potentially be a rescheduling of this game somewhere down the line. Now, there hasn't been an update in terms of a future date for that game. But in this following week, much different verbiage in a release for this one. It's a full-on release. It was issued by the league, by both teams, statements, and within it, all the same verbiage about that. It was a forfeiture. The 3-goal score line in favor of the Reign, going to count as a loss for the Spirit. So there's a lot of all of us, again, talking about the simulation. We're like hamsters, right? We're like hamsters on the wheel, and we just keep running and running and running and expect to maybe find a different result, and then that just doesn't happen for whatever reason. But I have to feel that just because of the scenario in last week's match that was canceled against Portland is a little bit different in this situation, because in this one, the forfeiture is issued deliberately because the league is saying that there were breaches of the league's medical protocol by the Spirit specifically. And then with that prior game, it was just a cancellation. And maybe it's just the scope of that being, we're in a pandemic. You can't necessarily, punish or issue a forfeiture because a team got COVID. This is just part of the new world that we're living in and trying to navigate our lives alongside and with adjacent to, however you want to phrase it, a pandemic. So just maybe 2 different scenarios, but there's a lot of question marks about it, because it's like, what is different from what happened, what was found or what was discovered, what happened from last week to this week, where it's deemed actually there's a breach of medical protocol. So this is going to be a forfeiture now.
Yes. So, Sandra, you just spelled it all out. To take you inside my mind over this weekend and when this news broke, I wanted to set up a corkboard with the pictures and the press releases and images and the forfeit and the Portland game and tie the red string together and make all the dots like I was solving a mystery for the FBI. Because honestly, that's a little bit what this feels like, because like you said, it's hard to keep track of. So that was me trying to figure this all out. I went back and I looked through the NWSL medical protocol and the different updates they had made to that. It's all on the NWSL website. I was just trying to find out anything we could. So I found out as a broadcaster of this game or of the league on Saturday afternoon around 1:30 that this game was going to be not played anymore. And that's all we heard, because as broadcasters, we need to know that to stop prepping our games, that you don't have to travel to the game anymore, whatever it may be. We get notified pretty early on as soon as the call is made. So as broadcasters, we were waiting for the official press release, because at this point, we don't know anything. We just know that the game is not happening anymore. So then I think it was around 4:00 Eastern about on Saturday. So this is about 24 hours before the game is played that the press release comes out. And we find out that it's a forfeit, which is different than the week before. And like Sandra said, that changes things. And because it was a breach of the league's medical protocol, that changes things as well. Because Washington, like, guys, what is happening there? Honestly. So because it was a breach of the league's medical protocol, I'm pretty much, I can assume myself that it's not just a positive COVID case, another one. Because like you said, it's this world that we're living in. And despite everything that you do, getting vaccinated, staying quarantined, wearing a mask, sanitizing, washing your hands, disinfecting, you can still test positive for COVID. Symptoms or no symptoms, you can still have somewhat symptoms and test negative. It could be a cold, it could be a number of other things. So it's honestly, in the world, it's a little bit hard to tell how and when you can test positive for COVID. So I didn't think it was just another positive case within the Washington Spirit. And as another reminder, because I read the entire NWSL medical protocol, there is no vaccine mandate in this league. I had a busy weekend. We said it at the top. I read through this like 50-some page protocol that the league puts out, because I was interested as to what could have possibly happened. And so there's a number of things. There's protocol with COVID that they could have broken. I don't know. I'm just speculating. This is just Lisa Roman and her corkboard with her red string speculating. It could have been that the protocol was broken with contact tracing. It could have been that the players came back to training too early, or that they didn't quarantine well enough or long enough. But there's also the factor of the vaccines and what players have and have not been vaccinated. And per the NWSL, it's not required that players submit that information publicly. It's not required that the players get vaccinated. It's only required that the vaccine is available for the players. So that definitely plays a factor into this as well. But there has been different reports made on Twitter that some 85% of the Washington team had been vaccinated, which 26 players, it's Lisa math again, so it might be wrong, but 26 players on a roster, 85% would mean that 4 players are unvaccinated. Now, again, you can still test positive and have COVID if you are vaccinated. But it was then reported on Twitter that 8 players in the Washington Spirit tested positive for COVID.
Yeah.
Or were unvaccinated. 4 tested positive and 8 were unvaccinated. So I don't know.
These are reporters on Twitter. Like, these aren't just like,
yes. I'm sorry.
This isn't like at user 12345 You know what I'm saying? Like, these are like reporters within the soccer space, whether
that
it was someone
have a source within Washington Spirit, within the club, giving them this information.
somebody like a Stephen Goff from the Post, or like a
Mhm.
Pablo Nauer from the Athletic, or Meg Linehan from the Athletic, and so forth. So it's just like how it's, quite frankly, is where I'm at. It's like how it's and win. Those are my two W's. My two, the who, what, where, when, and how. So I have the how, and then I also have the when. I'm just
Yes.
kind of like, it just feels constant. That's my thing with this. It's just, I don't want to say endless. I don't want to say that, but it just feels so.
It is constant, and one of the results of this happening with after the OL Reign game became a forfeit, and OL Reign was awarded a win with 3-0 win. Then Portland fans and Portland players were saying, "Hey, what about us in our game that 2 weeks ago was postponed due to COVID?" And I think that the rules are a little bit different there because of that. Uh, the rules are different because with the Portland game, players had tested positive. So you can't fault a team for getting tested positive, especially in the medical protocol. There's nothing that says that in the NWSL. And now maybe they've changed the rules. I'm not sure. According to the protocol, they haven't changed anything yet. But even if they did over this last week, change the rules that if you test positive, it's considered a forfeit because we're trying to make this the safest league. That may be the case. But I don't think you can retroactively apply that to the Portland Spirit game and give Portland a forfeit. I think that game will still be rescheduled and it should still be rescheduled. But honestly,
Yeah.
I don't know. This is, again, just me speculating, taking the information I'm given, really digesting it and thinking it through long and hard, and then giving it back to you guys.
Well, I'm also just thinking of like on the Portland side of things. I mean, this was a game that was going to be hosted at Providence Park, and I'm not going to get on this podcast and pretend that all teams are created equal. They're not. We see the type of audience. We see the type of audience that Portland brings in, and it's typically a large crowd in the thousands. So I would imagine that that's a certain amount of revenue that you want to try to make sure that your team retains, versus maybe another club that would have hosted this game. So we're still waiting to see if that game is eventually going to be rescheduled, when and if or how.
And also, I think going off of that Portland playing at home and the revenue side of it, I also think that Portland, in a sense, believed they would win that game. So either way, they're thinking it could be a win if they still play that, because they are playing at home. They have the home crowd advantage, and Providence Park is a very intimidating place to play. And a team like Washington Spirit that has been through so much, and a team like Portland who sits on top, it could be a good game for Portland to win. So yeah, we don't have any word yet if it has been rescheduled as of this recording.
Another one of like my primary reactions to all this was just like just feeling for the players, quite frankly. I mean, this is a team that has they've been putting together results despite all of these sort of outside factors happening, right? And they're a team that have managed to stay in what's considered this year playoff position, in that you got to be somewhere on the top six positions to get into the playoffs. So they've been doing that. They've been doing enough. And then all of these things started occurring for the team. There was the very awkward announcement about former head coach Richie Burke stepping away due to health issues, and that he was going to take some time off and then eventually be reintegrated with the team in a front office role. And then the following day, reports about toxic cultures and environments at the team, and then the league and the club both saying an investigation is underway, and he has been, they're separated while this is ongoing. And then the canceled game against Portland Thorns. In between that, some no longer they
sell the team, Steve.
They sell the team, Steve. came through. The fans are letting themselves trying to have themselves be heard. Um, because this is also a Washington Spirit club that introduced this year, a number of extended investorship within their club. So while there is a majority owner, right, and I guess that's what they're referring to in Steve Baldwin, there are a number of owners within the investorship group, and we saw some like weird sort of infighting. Again, this is all sourced via reporting done via Twitter, and then there's just like weird back and forth going on there. Then the official hiring of Ben Olsen, a former DC United player, which a lot of people have mixed feelings about as well, due to his lack of experience, due to it being perceived as a hire is just sort of like, well, let's just sort of reach out, cast a wide net into like the DC area, and here's a former player and with some experience, and putting them in this role, and then just sort of having like a mixed reaction to that, and so the fandom as well, as long as the players have my sympathy, because I can't imagine what it feels like maybe being a supporter of this club and having to sort of almost feels like wake up to like a new bit of just discouraging news. And for me, the biggest things for me, even in between all of the very just for lack of a better word, just sort of awkward things that are going on in this club right
I
now.
love your terminology. It's awkward and it's weird, and
It
those are
is.
the best words to
It's
describe
awkward
it.
and weird. I mean, it's just until we know what it is, right? That's the other thing. There are ongoing investigations. The lack of transparency has been a huge issue with multiple parties in this regular season, whether it's been club related or league related. And that's like a huge thing. That is another topic for another day. But yeah, I would imagine if you're a season ticket holder, you're like, I'm out. Like, what's going on here? And that's tough. That's absolutely tough. I mean, for me, the biggest thing is the fact that if not for nothing, the players can at least dictate their things on the pitch, and they haven't been able to do that in these last 2 weeks. So what is left? What's the next step? I think that's what people are sort of feeling. There's sort of like this almost like a tipping point, I think. And I don't imagine, I can't imagine that it's unfair or otherwise to wonder about the current state of this particular franchise and their future and their position in this league. I don't imagine you can be sitting in an office and taking a look at everything that has been coming out, quite frankly, week to week now at this point, and say, this is okay. This is good and acceptable. And this is the attention that we want on our league. I can't imagine that is okay. So because of that, I don't think it's unfair at all to wonder, and by extension, worry, quite frankly, about the future of this franchise and their current state in the league. And it's incredibly disheartening, especially considering at this point of the season.
It is very, very disappointing. Heartbreaking for the players, like you said, the supporters, the opponents for Portland, and now OL Reign, who don't get to compete as well this week, and maybe this FIFA window coming up starting this week. No games next weekend for the NWSL due to the FIFA window. Maybe this break will be good for Washington Spirit. Maybe they can get their ducks in a row a little bit, try to straighten some things out, iron out some of the wrinkles that have really been happening. I'm not saying like iron the whole tablecloth, but like iron maybe a corner of it and give some answers to the supporters, to the fans, to the media covering the league and the team, just some type of answers. I like to be hopeful and glass half full kind of gal that this week FIFA window break for the season and for the league, we will maybe get some answers at the end of it.
We'll see. If somehow, some kind of way, after 2 weeks, Lisa, of not playing, this Washington Spirit side still finds themselves in playoff standing at the moment.